During the war, the Pentagon announced victory statistics. The Patriot system was stopping 97% of Scud missiles, they said, a nearly perfect success rate. The world believed it. Media ran headlines, "Miracle weapon, Star Wars becomes reality." American technology had triumphed once again. But after the war ended, questions began. Independent researchers examined the videos. Israeli intelligence conducted its own analysis, and the picture that emerged was very different. Patriot missiles were not hitting the Scuds, they were passing by them. Sometimes the Scud had already broken apart. Sometimes the Patriot had locked onto the wrong target. Sometimes nothing happened at all. The real success rate? According to some estimates, 0%. One of the greatest military propaganda victories in history was built on a lie. This is the story of how a missile defense system became a symbol of American technological superiority, and how the truth was hidden for years behind a wall of statistics and spin. To understand the Patriot controversy, you must first understand the weapon it was supposed to defeat. The Scud missile was a Soviet design from the 1950s. It was based on the German V-2 rocket from World War II. Simple, reliable, inaccurate. A weapon designed to terrorize populations, not destroy specific targets. Iraq had purchased hundreds of Scuds from the Soviet Union during the 1980s. Saddam Hussein's engineers modified them, extending their range by reducing the warhead size and adding extra fuel. They called their version the Al-Hussein. The modifications made the missiles even less accurate. They also made them structurally weaker. When an Al-Hussein re-entered the atmosphere at high speed, it often broke apart from the stress. The warhead would separate from the body. Pieces would scatter across the sky. This would become critically important, because breaking apart made the Scuds harder to intercept, not easier. When the Gulf War began, in January 1991, Saddam Hussein made a calculated decision. He would attack Israel with Scud missiles. The goal was not military, it was political. If Israel retaliated, the Arab members of the American-led coalition might withdraw. Egypt and Syria would not fight alongside Israel against a fellow Arab nation. The coalition would fracture. Saddam would survive. The Scuds began falling on Tel Aviv and Haifa. Civilians huddled in sealed rooms, wearing gas masks, terrified that the next missile might carry chemical weapons. Israel demanded action. America had to respond. The Patriot missile system was America's answer. But there was a problem. Patriot was never designed to shoot down ballistic missiles. The system was developed in the 1970s and 80s to defend against aircraft. Soviet bombers, low-flying attack jets, cruise missiles, targets that flew at predictable speeds along predictable paths. A Scud missile was something entirely different. It climbed to the edge of space, then plunged down at speeds exceeding Mach 5. It followed a ballistic trajectory that was difficult to predict, and the modified Iraqi versions broke apart unpredictably during re-entry. The Army had developed an upgrade called PAC-2, which gave Patriot some capability against tactical ballistic missiles. But this capability had never been tested in combat. No one knew if it would actually work. When the Gulf War began, the Army rushed Patriot batteries to Israel and Saudi Arabia. American crews operated the systems in Israel, the first time U.S. forces had directly defended Israeli territory. The political pressure was immense. Patriot had to work. If it failed, Israel might enter the war. The coalition might collapse. Everything depended on those missiles. And so, when the first Scuds fell and Patriots rose to meet them, the Pentagon announced success. The missiles were being intercepted. The system was working. Israel was protected. The media celebrated. The public cheered. Patriot became a symbol of American technological prowess. But behind the celebrations, the truth was very different. If you want to discover the secret technologies and untold stories of the Cold War, subscribe to our channel. We bring you new content every week. The Pentagon's public affairs operation went into overdrive. Every Patriot launch was presented as a successful intercept. Dramatic footage showed missiles streaking into the sky. Explosions lit up the night. Commentators praised the miracle weapon that was protecting innocent civilians. The statistics were remarkable. 97% success rate in Saudi Arabia, 50% or higher in Israel. These numbers were repeated by generals, by politicians, by journalists around the world. Raytheon, the company that manufactured Patriot, saw its stock price soar. The system that cost billions to develop was suddenly the most sought-after weapon in the world. Orders poured in from allied nations. President Bush personally praised Patriot in his speeches. This was proof, he said, that American technology could defeat any threat. The Strategic Defense Initiative, mocked by critics as Star Wars fantasy, was suddenly credible. But there were problems with the story. Journalists in Israel noticed something strange. The morning after Patriot intercepts, damage was still being reported on the ground. Buildings were destroyed. People were injured. If the Scuds were being intercepted high in the sky, why was there still so much destruction? Israeli military officials began expressing private doubts. Their own analysis suggested that Patriot was not performing as advertised, but publicly, they said nothing. The political situation was too delicate. The American military was not interested in questions. They had a war to win and a narrative to maintain. The Patriot success story would not be challenged. After the war, Israeli defense officials conducted a comprehensive review of Patriot performance. Their conclusion was devastating. There was no evidence that Patriot had successfully intercepted even a single Scud missile over Israel. The Israeli team examined every engagement. They analyzed radar data, video footage, and ground damage patterns. What they found contradicted everything the Pentagon had claimed. In most cases, Patriot missiles and Scuds had passed each other without contact. The Patriot's guidance system would detect the incoming Scud, but the missile would fail to actually hit it. The explosion seen on video was the Patriot's warhead detonating at the end of its flight, not a successful intercept. The Scud would continue on its trajectory and hit the ground. The warhead might detonate, or, because of the structural problems with the modified Iraqi missiles, it might already have broken apart during re-entry. The Israeli analysis suggested that some of the ground damage attributed to successful intercepts was actually caused by falling Patriot debris. The missiles that were supposed to protect civilians were sometimes adding to the destruction. This was not a minor discrepancy. The Pentagon had claimed near-perfect performance. The Israeli evidence suggested complete failure. The Israeli government did not publicize these findings immediately. Relations with America were too important. But the doubts began to spread through defense circles. The most damaging assessment came from an unlikely source, a team of researchers at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Theodore Postal and George Lewis, professors at MIT, began analyzing Patriot performance using publicly available video footage and data. Their methodology was rigorous. Their conclusions were explosive. According to Postal and Lewis, there was no evidence that Patriot had achieved any successful intercepts. The videos that the Army presented as proof of success actually showed systematic failure. They identified several critical problems. First, the Patriot radar had difficulty distinguishing between the Scud warhead and the missile body. When a Scud broke apart during re-entry, which happened frequently with the Iraqi modifications, Patriot often tracked the wrong piece. It would chase the empty fuel tank while the warhead continued toward its target. Second, even when Patriot did close with a target, it often failed to destroy it. The PAC-2 warhead was designed to damage aircraft, not harden ballistic missile warheads. A near miss that would cripple a bomber might leave a Scud warhead intact. Third, the engagement geometry was wrong. Patriot was designed for side-on engagements against aircraft. Against a Scud diving almost straight down, the angles were unfavorable. The closing speeds were too high. The system was being used far outside its design parameters. Postal and Lewis estimated the actual success rate at somewhere between 0 and 4%. Not 97%, not even close. Their findings were published in peer-reviewed journals. The Army disputed them furiously. But the damage to Patriot's reputation was done. The most tragic evidence of Patriot failure came on February 25, 1991. An Iraqi Scud missile was launched toward Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. The target was a complex that included barracks housing American troops. A Patriot battery was supposed to protect the area. The Patriot radar detected the incoming Scud. The system prepared to engage. Then something went wrong. The missile never launched. A software error in the Patriot system caused it to misidentify the target's location. The error was related to how the system tracked time. Every hour the system ran, a tiny error accumulated. After 100 hours of continuous operation, the error had grown to 0.34 seconds. That does not sound like much, but at Scud speeds, 0.34 seconds translated to over half a kilometer of position error. The Patriot system thought the Scud was in a completely different location than it actually was. It did not fire. The Scud struck the barracks directly. 28 American soldiers were killed. 97 were wounded. It was the single deadliest attack on American forces during the entire Gulf War. The software error had been known before the attack. A patch had been developed, but it had not been installed in time at Dhahran. The battery had been running continuously, and no one had thought to restart the system. 28 Americans died because of a software bug and bureaucratic failure. The miracle weapon had failed completely when it mattered most. The Army did not accept the criticism quietly. Official Army studies concluded that Patriot had performed effectively. They disputed the Israeli findings. They attacked the MIT researchers as biased academics with political agendas. They insisted that the 97% figure was accurate or close to it. The debate became heated. Congressional hearings were held. Generals testified that Patriot had saved lives. Researchers testified that it had not. The public was left confused. The Army's defense rested on several arguments. They claimed that even near misses were valuable. A Patriot that passed close to a Scud might disrupt its trajectory, causing it to miss populated areas. Success did not require destruction, just deflection. They argued that the ground damage in Israel was caused by Scud components falling after successful intercepts. When Patriot destroyed a Scud, pieces would still rain down. This explained why there was damage even after successful engagements. They disputed the MIT methodology. Video analysis, they said, could not capture what really happened. Only the Army's classified radar data told the true story, and that data, conveniently, could not be released for security reasons. The Army position had supporters. Raytheon, which had made billions from Patriot sales, funded studies that supported the official narrative. Defense analysts who depended on Pentagon access were reluctant to challenge the military. But the weight of independent evidence continued to mount against the official story. A General Accounting Office investigation in 1992 delivered a mixed verdict. The GAO could not determine exactly how many Scuds Patriot had successfully intercepted. The evidence was contradictory. The Army's claims were not supported by the available data. But the GAO also could not definitively prove that Patriot had failed completely. However, the GAO did confirm several embarrassing facts. The 97% claim was based on flawed methodology. The Army had counted every engagement as a success unless there was clear evidence of failure. Given the chaos of combat and the limitations of observation, this meant almost everything was counted as a success. The GAO also confirmed that Patriot's effectiveness had been significantly overstated for political reasons. The need to keep Israel out of the war had created pressure to present Patriot in the best possible light. The truth had been sacrificed to political necessity. Over the following years, the consensus among independent analysts hardened. Patriot PAC-2 had not been an effective defense against Scud missiles. The success rate was far below what the Army had claimed. The Gulf War had demonstrated that the technology of ballistic missile defense was far more difficult than anyone had admitted. The Army eventually acknowledged some problems, Later versions of Patriot, the PAC-3 system, incorporated significant improvements. The lessons of the Gulf War, officially or not, had been learned. But the myth of Patriot's Gulf War success persisted in popular memory. The images of missiles streaking into the sky, the explosions against the darkness, the grateful civilians emerging from shelters, these had become part of the war's narrative. The truth could not compete with the propaganda. The Patriot controversy was about more than one weapon system. It was about how America understood technological warfare. For decades, the United States had invested in the promise of missile defense. From the early anti-ballistic missile programs of the 1960s to Reagan's Strategic Defense Initiative in the 1980s, the dream had been to render nuclear missiles obsolete. Technology would provide an umbrella of protection. Patriots in Gulf War seemed to validate that dream. If tactical ballistic missiles could be intercepted with 97% success, why not strategic ones? The doubters were wrong. Missile defense worked. The reality was far more sobering. Even relatively simple, slow, inaccurate missiles had proven extremely difficult to intercept. The Scud was not a sophisticated weapon. It was 1950s technology, and Patriot, representing the best of American engineering, had struggled against it. What did this mean for defending against modern Russian or Chinese missiles? Against weapons that maneuvered, deployed countermeasures, and traveled at even higher speeds? The gap between the dream and the reality was enormous. The Patriot controversy also revealed how easily the public could be misled during wartime. The combination of genuine uncertainty, political pressure, and media enthusiasm had created a false narrative that persisted for years. The truth had been available to those who looked for it, but the lie was more convenient, more comforting, more useful. This pattern would repeat in later conflicts. Claims of precision weapons and surgical strikes that later proved exaggerated. Confident assertions that crumbled under scrutiny. The line between information and propaganda blurred in the fog of war. The Patriot system remained in service long after the Gulf War. The PAC-3 version, developed partly in response to the failures of 1991, represented a fundamentally different approach. Instead of detonating near the target and hoping shrapnel would destroy it, PAC-3 used hit-to-kill technology. The missile would directly collide with the incoming threat, guaranteeing destruction if contact was made. PAC-3 has demonstrated genuine capability against ballistic missiles in testing and limited combat. The lessons of the Gulf War, even if never fully acknowledged, were incorporated into the new design. Patriot batteries have been deployed in numerous conflicts since 1991. In the 2003 Iraq War, they achieved confirmed kills against Iraqi missiles. In recent years, Saudi Arabia has used Patriot against missiles and drones launched by Yemen's Houthi forces. But the shadow of the Gulf War claims has never fully lifted. Whenever Patriot is deployed, analysts ask the same questions. Is it really working? Are the success claims genuine? Has the Pentagon learned to tell the truth? For the families of the 28 soldiers killed at Dhahran, the legacy is personal. Their loved ones died because a missile defense system failed, and because the software error that caused the failure was not corrected in time. No amount of propaganda could change that reality. The Gulf War demonstrated that the truth about weapons performance matters. Inflated claims create false confidence. False confidence leads to poor decisions. Poor decisions cost lives. The Patriot story is a reminder that in war, the first casualty is often the truth. And sometimes the truth does not emerge for years after the shooting stops.